Yeah, so we just have some basic facts about Argentina to kind of get you acclimated to the country. So, oop, when I was there, I went to the capital city of Buenos Aires. It is, well, Argentina in general, it's located at the bottom of South America. And the diversity with regards to geography is humongous. You have along the Chilean border, you have the mountains on the Atlantic coast, you have beaches. The Iguazu Falls is kind of bordering Brazil, Paraguay region. So the geography is very diverse. The country has over 44 million people. It's actually the second largest South American country. And its Independence Day is July 9th, 1816. And actually the street that is depicted here where you can kind of see that monument. It looks honestly like the Washington Monument, but it was built for a different reason. Um, but this tree is actually called the 9th of July, just to kind of commemorate that Independence Day. And I actually recall when I first got there, that was one of the first places that we went to just to kind of take pictures and really understand, um, all the kind of history that is associated with this city. Earlier, someone mentioned tango. Buenos Aires is where tango began. And so there's lots of history associated with the city. So.
And I'm just going to give some brief facts about Japan. So Japan's located in East Asia. It's made up of thousands of islands, but has five main ones. They don't really have states, but they have something called prefectures, which are kind of like states. There's 47 of them, with Tokyo being the capital. And Japan's very densely populated. Has about 127 million people. So just for reference, it's the 11th largest country in the world. And on the right is the flag. And just reminding, I studied abroad in Tokyo, but I also studied abroad in Chiba, which you can't really see on the map, but it's very close to Tokyo. I'll go on the next slide.
Yeah, so because this is language and pop culture, just wanting to give a very condensed version of a language workshop. So Spanish in Argentina is very distinct. First, kind of starting off with the accent, el acento. So in Spanish, I have two words at the bottom, la calle and la playa. So those are how it's normally said in most other Spanish-speaking countries. But because Argentina is so unique, and actually Uruguay pronounces it this way as well, but the LL and the Y or Y are pronounced with a sh sound. So instead of la calle, it will be la calle. And instead of la playa, it will be la playa. So you can kind of, when you're listening to either music or watching movies, if you hear that sh sound, you kind of are automatically able to pretty much guess where they're from, whether it be Argentina or Uruguay. And just kind of continue with that. So actually you can see in the left-hand side is a map of the country using El Voceo. So usually in other Spanish-speaking countries, they use el tuteo, which is, well, tu is the informal way of saying you. And so you can see in the map that Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, they use el voceo in writing and spoken language as well, as opposed to other countries might just speak it, but not really write it. But a majority of countries just kind of err on the side of using el tuteo. But if you kind of want to compare between el tuteo and el voceo, there's not much of a difference. It's just they change in the present tense and imperative commandments when you're speaking. So here I have like a comparison between the two. So instead of you saying hablas español, you would say hablas español. You can see where tu doesn't have the accent over the A, vos does. And this is kind of goes pretty much for almost all verbs. So hablar, comer, vivir, pensar. You just kind of drop off that R and add an accent to the ending. There's only a few exceptions to the rule, but I just kind of stick to the majority of words. And this is kind of to show you the comparison between the two different ways you conjugate within Argentina as opposed to other countries. And then with the imperative tense, so you have the side by side again, tu versus vos. Again, in the imperative or the command, you typically just drop the R to tell them, habla inglés, like speak English, or habla español. But in Argentina, Uruguay, and other countries that use el voceo, you're going to drop the R and add an accent over that final vowel for the word. And so here we have some examples: bailas el tango or la salsa, which means do you dance the tango or salsa? And as you can see, the R was dropped off and you add an accent to that final vowel, so bailas. And when you're speaking it, when you add the accent, instead of saying bailas, you would just kind of put a little bit more of an emphasis on that letter. And then the second example, we have the imperative command, so lava los platos, wash the dishes. And then again, just to kind of remind you, this is for informal use. You're not going to use this when you're speaking to your elders or someone of more superior position. You would use it for someone that you're kind of familiar with, that's like family or friends or things like that. So, and then just wanting to make sure you guys remember just to kind of practice el voceo. So I want you to fill in the blank with the correct voceo conjugation. We have an example here of poder, which I want you to conjugate into the present tense. And so here for the example, it would be podes estudiar en la biblioteca. You can study in the library. Just to kind of remind you that you just drop off that final R and add an accent for the vowel or the verb. So we have the poll that you can complete for it.
And a question for the elementary students: instead of the poll, they can guess what the verb practicar means in English. They can write it, write the English word in the chat for what they think that might mean. All right, and we have in the chat, do you practice sports? So, okay. Oh, and here's the results. Sorry, there you go.
Practicas. Yeah, so I see a majority of people got it correct. So yeah, just again for el voceo, when you're conjugating the words for present tense, you just drop that R and then add an accent to the final vowel. It's kind of a little bit slightly different from el tuteo, which you just leave the R, but we can go to the next question. So pintar, put that in the present tense, hermosos murales. And you can, again, if you're elementary school, you can kind of guess what pintar means.
Yep, if you want to guess, you can write in the chat what you think pintar might mean. So in the chat, we have a couple people that guessed it means to paint, which is correct. Give you guys a couple more seconds to vote. All right, here's the results for the second one.
Okay, so we have a majority of people saying pintas, which is correct again. El voceo, you just drop off that R and add an accent to the final vowel. Yeah, so I guess we can go to the next question. So Serrar, you're gonna put this not in the present tense, but in the imperative, which is a command. Yeah, you can also try to guess again what serrar means if you're part of the younger crowd.
And maybe if you're younger, you've heard of the word la puerta, which might be a clue what cerrar might mean. That one's a little bit harder. All right, the results.
Okay, so I'm seeing a majority of people put it in the imperative sense. So I see some people put it in serás, which is the present tense in el voceo, but when you're making a command for the tú or for the el voz informal, you're just gonna drop off the R at an accent. You're not gonna add an S. So it'd just be cerrá la puerta. If this was el tuteo, you would say cierra la puerta. But yeah, this is again for the informal conversation between two people.
Okay, last one. And for the elementary students, they can guess what they think comer might mean.
Yeah, so I see a very large majority got the correct conjugation. So vi come, come las verduras si quieres postre. And you can kind of see, I really want to kind of include both forms of it. So come, you would add the accent to the E. Las verduras si quieres, which is the present tense conjugation for el voceo. So the translation is eat the vegetables if you want dessert. And yeah, I'm really glad you guys participated. I hope you kind of learned how to conjugate for el voceo, which is used more so in Argentina and Uruguay.
Okay, so I'm just going to give a basic overview of the Japanese language. Now, I know Japanese can seem a little intimidating just because they have characters instead of like a Romanized alphabet. But really, if you get the hang of it, it's not as daunting and as hard as it seems. So Japanese has 3 writing systems. I've named them up on the slide. On the left, starting with kanji, and then hiragana, and then katakana. Kanji is the oldest writing system in Japan. It came from China, and it's basically like little pictures to represent words. For example, the kanji that I chose is the kanji for a mountain. It's called yama. And if you look at the kanji, it kind of looks like a mountain. Unfortunately, not all kanji looks like what they're supposed to describe, but this is an example of one that does. And then in the middle is hiragana. Hiragana is kind of like an alphabet. There's 46 letters, well, characters, and they represent syllables. And you can technically write everything in Japanese from hiragana, but it's kind of hard because a lot of words sound the same. So if you have a bunch of hiragana, it's kind of hard to read a sentence or like a paragraph, which is why it's useful to use kanji, because then when you see like the picture of a certain word, it's easier to know what you're talking about. It's also helpful if you're like if you're reading a sentence and you don't know the meaning of the sentence, but you kind of know what the kanji is, you can kind of guess what the sentence is, which is really helpful. And the last writing system is katakana. Katakana is only used for foreign words. So for example, I wrote my name in katakana since my name is not Japanese. And if I were to write it in Japanese, I would use only katakana. And if you were to, I guess if you needed to read like a newspaper in Japan, you'd need to know about 2,000, roughly 2,000 kanji, which sounds like a lot. But once you know the basics of them, it's kind of easy to memorize them. Hiragana and katakana both have 46 characters that you can memorize, so they're a little easier, and typically you'll learn those first before you start learning kanji. And yeah, we can go to the next slide now. So I'm going to teach you guys a simple self-introduction in Japanese. I didn't write any in kanji or hiragana, so it's going to be easier. I use romaji, which is just the romanized, well, the characters put in like the English alphabet. So we're going to start with the first word. I know it's pretty long, but we're going to break it down so it's easier. And this word is hajimemashite. It literally means for the first time, but it translates roughly into English as nice to meet you. So I'm going to encourage you guys to try to pronounce it on your own in your homes, but I'm just going to break it down for you. So ha, ji, me, ma, shi, te. And together again, hajimemashite. And that again means nice to meet you. Next is what you would say when you're introducing your name. I have 2 versions of this, just in case the first one's too hard, you can just say the shortened version. The first version is watashi no namae wa, then you say your name. My name is Tatiana, so I'd say watashi no namae wa Tatiana desu. But if you think that's too hard, you can just say your name and desu. So again, I'm just going to break it down, starting with watashi wa ta shi. This means I, or the pronoun for you, and then no, which is like the possessive, and then namae, which is name, and it kind of looks like name. Wa is there for grammatical purposes, and then des, which makes a sentence polite and like the ending for the sentence. So again, watashi no namae wa Tatiana desu. So kind of hard, but again, if you want to shorten it, you can just say your name and desu. And then the next sentence is I'm a student. So again, in normal speed, watashi wa gakusei desu. And I'm going to break it down. Watashi wa gakusei desu. So I didn't mention this before, but I broke down des into desu, which technically that's right, but you would never pronounce it as desu. It is pronounced as des. And then the last phrase is yoroshiku onegaishimasu. And there's no direct English translation for this. It's just something you say at the end of the sentence when you're introducing yourself. But roughly, it's kind of like, please look favorably upon me, or like, I guess that's just good greetings. But again, it's yoroshiku onegaishimasu. It's again pretty long, but we're going to break it down. Yoro shiku onegai shimasu. And again, yoroshiku onegai shimasu. So if we were to say all of this together one full time, if I was introducing myself to you, I'd say, Hajimemashite, watashi no namae wa Tatiana desu. Watashi wa gatsei desu. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. And that's a pretty simple standard self-introduction in Japanese.